Hello and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at.
All uses of force have been more than exemplary.
But a federal judge disagrees and imposes tighter restrictions on federal immigration agents' use of force against protesters.
I feel that it's the pandemic one more time.
Some Chicago businesses are feeling the effects of Operation Midway Blitz. A look at how their communities are rallying around them.
We're not going to continue to balance budgets off the backs of working people. There's a better pathway.
And the debate over the city budget heats up as Mayor Johnson pushes for a corporate head tax on large companies. First off tonight, a federal judge delivers a stinging rebuke over the actions of federal immigration agents in Chicago. U.S. District Court Judge Sara Ellis says the conduct of agents executing the Trump administration's Operation Midway Blitz, quote, shocks the conscience. As a result, Judge Ellis today issued a sweeping injunction designed to permanently rein in agents' use of tear gas, pepper balls, and other crowd control measures. Our Heather Sharon joins us now with more. Heather, take us inside Judge Ellis's courtroom. It was at the Dirksen Federal Courthouse when she delivered this broad order.
She spoke from the bench for nearly 90 minutes, painstakingly detailing all of the instances she said where federal agents indiscriminately used crowd control measures like tear gas, pepper balls, and other uses of force against the people of Chicago for doing nothing more than exercising their First Amendment rights. And that includes to speech, assembly, and to the practice of religion. Now, she said that the government had been completely incredible in what they told her. And she said, quote, the government would have people believe instead that the Chicagoland area is in a vice hold of violence, ransacked by rioters and attacked by agitators. That simply is untrue. And the government's own evidence in this case belies that assertion.
Okay. Judge Ellis, she also had some particularly sharp words for Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino, who has become the face of the president's mass deportation effort, saying that he lied. What about?
She singled out two instances when he directly used force against the people of Chicago. The first was on October 23rd when he fired tear gas at a crowd that had assembled in Little Village, which is, of course, the heart of Chicago's Mexican-American community. He said that he had been struck in the head with a rock before he fired tear gas at the crowd. Bovino admitted during his sworn deposition that he was not struck with a rock, and he said during that deposition that he acknowledged he had lied. In the second instance, during that deposition, he watched a video of himself tackling a protester outside the Broadview ICE facility. Even after watching that video during the deposition, he said that he had not used force against that protester, a claim that Judge Ellis clearly found simply incredible.
Incredible. And of course, to be clear, when we say incredible, we're not, oh, that's amazing.
No.
Incredible as in the judge did not believe it, found it to not be credible. She's not the only judge, though, to have found federal agents' testimony not credible. Remind us of these other cases.
U.S. District Court Judge April Perry, who's overseeing the case challenging the Trump administration's deployment of National Guard troops into Chicago, said that the testimony she has heard from federal agents was simply unreliable. And in a third case just this week, Judge Robert Gettleman dismissed federal agents' testimony that the people being held at that Broadview ICE facility were being well taken care of. Instead, he said it had turned into a prison with unspeakably cruel conditions.
A lot of cases to keep up with for
Yes.
viewers here. What happens next, Heather?
Now, the Trump administration told me they will immediately appeal Judge Ellis's order, calling her an activist judge who had put the safety of law enforcement agents at risk. Judge Ellis no doubt anticipated that appeal. She said all she is asking the Trump administration to do is simply follow the Constitution and allow the people of Chicago to exercise their First Amendment rights.
Okay. Heather Sharon, thank you so much.
Thanks, Brandis.
And you can read Heather's full story on our website. It's all at WTTW.com/news.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Also tonight, a federal judge orders the Trump administration to fully fund the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, benefits this month. The full amount of SNAP benefits have been withheld since the start of November because of the government shutdown, with the administration releasing only partial funding. A number of cities and nonprofits sued the government in order to force full payment of benefits. Now the federal judge has ordered the Trump administration to find the money for full benefits by tomorrow. Some 42 million Americans receive SNAP assistance. Credit analysts are sounding the alarm about Chicago's finances, but Mayor Brandon Johnson is defending his latest budget proposal despite S&P Global Ratings revising its outlook on the city's credit rating from stable to negative.
I know that there have been questions around pensions, and when the executive order was put into place under the previous administration, it was set up to provide an additional advance payment based upon an assigned balance. Well, we no longer have that. However, we still were able to, even in these very difficult, tumultuous times, still put forth an advance payment while not cutting services. I think it's a remarkable testament to the innovation and the ingenuity that has been put forth in this particular budget.
In a statement, the company says, quote, "We believe social capital risks weaken our overall analysis of the city's credit fundamentals, given access inequities to quality health care, public education, and housing that, in our view, could contribute to population loss and economic underperformance over time." Meanwhile, air travel is about to get a lot bumpier as some of the nation's busiest airports begin cutting flights tomorrow. The Federal Aviation Administration says it will reduce air traffic by 10% across high-volume markets, including both Chicago airports, due to the ongoing government shutdown. The agency says the move is to maintain travel safety as air traffic controllers approach a second missed paycheck and are increasingly calling off work. Passengers should have begun to receive notice of flight cancellations today. United, Delta, and American are offering refunds to passengers who opt not to fly, even if their tickets are non-refundable. Up next, how Operation Midway Blitz is affecting many neighborhood businesses. Joanna Hernandez joins us from Belmont-Cragen with a live report. Since the federal government began Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago, many establishments have been experiencing a decline in sales and foot traffic due to concerns over immigration enforcement. Some local businesses are reporting that sales are just as low as during the pandemic. Restaurants, particularly those in Latino communities, may be the hardest hit. Our Joanna Hernandez is out in the Belmont-Cragen community and tells us more.
Brandon, that's right. Neighborhoods like Belmont-Cragen have had to get creative and host these restaurant crawls to support family-owned businesses in the area. Owners telling us they've even had to adjust operations to keep their businesses afloat.
When we were talking earlier, I was like, I thought after COVID, like, all right, we're in the clear. We don't have to think of anything spontaneous or something to survive anymore. And a couple years later, here we are again.
On any given weekday at lunchtime, Angelo's Stuffed Pizza in Archer Heights would be packed with customers, but it's 3 p.m. and it's quiet. Owner Adrian Zamudio says following the escalation of Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago, there has been a noticeable decline in business.
It'd be buzzing. We'd have kids coming in after school. We'd have parents, that come before, picking up their lunch for the kids afterwards.
Zamudio says slow sales have forced him to close shop on Mondays. This highlights the challenges many local businesses are currently confronting. In Belmont-Cragen, the local restaurant Hangry's is also facing a decline in sales and dining.
I feel that it's the pandemic one more time. And again, the only difference is that back then, there was support from the government. Okay, you know what, you're not able to stay home and there's a monthly check or whatever. But now it's just so difficult for everybody.
Illinois is home to thousands of Latino-owned businesses, contributing millions in tax revenue. Take Little Village, a neighborhood with a predominantly Latino population. It generates nearly $900 million a year in business, according to the Little Village Chamber of Commerce. However, business owners are now reporting losses of between 50 and 70% in sales since the start of ICE operations.
We stimulate the economy, and in our own way, we keep it going. And not only by spending, also by working, by producing, by helping out.
Victor Gallardo is one of the owners of Hangry's.
It hurts. Thank God we're legal, but also too that also ultimately even legal people we're suffering the consequences.
Jaime de Paulo, president of the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, says that the fear of ICE raids is devastating not only to restaurants but to businesses in general.
Let's just, for instance, a restaurant is losing 40%. Well, the suppliers, all right, they're not Latinos. They're some other culture. They're usually Greek, Italians, or whatever they are, but they're losing 40% also. So it's devastating for the whole ecosystem.
De Paulo says there's currently a lack of grants to assist struggling businesses, but the organization has been mobilizing to provide people with resources.
We got a team of people walking the business corridors, just giving people hope and giving people tools so they can improvise on how to do business better, how to use the internet.
In the midst of ongoing financial uncertainty, businesses are stepping up to support their communities. Angelo's Stuffed Pizza says it's donating 40% of their sales to the Street Vendor Association and offering free delivery on November 11th and 12th.
Helping communities, especially like in hard times like this, we know that it's going to come back around one way or another.
Hangry's recently hosted a fundraiser donating 100% of their sales to organizations that support families impacted by ICE.
From the business point of view, like we could do to help out, why not do it? Again, it's maybe won't impact as many people as we want, but also any little bit helps, I think.
And these are just two businesses that are facing financial difficulties, and they're still giving back. Now, from that fundraiser that was hosted by Hangry's, we're told that they raised $12,000 that will be donated to two local organizations, and then they will distribute those funds to people who've been impacted by ICE. And those are not the only ones. We were just approached by this business behind me called El Azteca. The owner tells us they are hosting a fundraiser tonight, and they're asking people to come support. The restaurant is open till 9 p.m., and those sales some of those sales will also be going to families who need help. Reporting from Belmont Cragen, I'm Joanna Hernandez. I send it back to you.
Best of luck to them, Joanna. Thank you. Up next, debating the mayor's controversial head tax proposal.
Reflecting the people and perspectives that make up our communities, this story is part of Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices.
Brandon Johnson wants large companies in Chicago to pay up. Johnson's most recent budget proposal calls for a $21 per employee monthly head tax for businesses with more than 100 workers. He says that would generate $100 million to fund violence prevention efforts. But it sparked a heated debate as critics say the tax would hurt the local economy. Johnson defended the plan earlier today.
I don't think it's an unreasonable service for 3% of our largest corporations that have 100 or more employees that are full-time to pay their fair share. Look, I made a commitment to the people of Chicago that we're going to invest in them and that we're going to challenge those with means to put more skin in the game.
Joining us to talk about the issue are Ishan Daya, co-director of the Institute for Public Good, a nonpartisan policy and advocacy group, and Pat Dorr, director of the Hospitality Business Association of Chicago. Thanks to both of you for joining us. I'm going to ask both of you about your positions on this tax. Ishan Daya, first to you. You support it. Tell us why.
Yeah, so I'm coming in with the perspective of a neighbor that came from a working class family but I'm also coming with the perspective of someone that started and scaled a 300-person business here in the city of Chicago, right? Decided to actually headquarter the city in the city of Chicago. And the reason that we did that was because we know that the top 3 reasons for people starting businesses in the city are for primarily quality of life. Right? Why do people start businesses in the city? It's because this city is the most affordable city, the most healthy large city in this country, and we want to make sure that we're continuing to do that. So as we think about this head tax, I want to be clear that this head tax is actually a different head tax than what was around in the Daley administration and around during the Rahm administration. Well,
yeah, we're going to talk about that one too. But
so the reason it's different is because that head tax targeted businesses that were 50 or more employees. This says we're actually not going to target the beloved Virtue that's on the South Side. We're not going to target the Bagel Miller in Lincoln Square that just recently actually closed its in-store sales because of ICE.
So you're saying this one is narrower, right?
It's much narrower. It's targeting
bigger companies, likely
exactly
larger
right.
income.
And
however, Pat, not a fan.
No, the CFO, when testifying this, was disingenuous to the point of lying. She said it only applies to full-time workers. Then you actually read the ordinance, it applies to any worker making $2,500 a month in 3 times in a quarter. That's a good bartender or server working part-time, you get roped in. The whole ordinance incorporates the same trap we have with Rahm, where it combined independent businesses that might share an owner, so a pizza or a bar that might own 2 locations, and combines them to get you to the 100, and then you're stuck being liable because you've doubled or tripled down on Chicago and opened 3 locations. And now you're going to be paying this much higher $21 employee tax.
Okay, so and I'm going to come back to you, I promise. So, Pat, supporters of this tax, though, they say, and the mayor has said it himself, that the city needs this money to fund the community violence intervention and prevention work that the city has seen success with, along with other services. So, if big companies rely on the city to provide that public safety, as well as educating the future workforce, do you think those big companies should also pitch in to support the community safety efforts, as the mayor says it would?
Well, as WTTW has covered, a lot of those companies donated generously to City Hall programs for youth employment and crime prevention headed by the Crown family. But above and beyond that, what are property taxes for? What are the 10 to 12% sales taxes we're paying for that go to the city of Chicago? What are the fees for? We're creating a whole new tax. And honestly, the mayor does have one good point. Jobs are a great way to stabilize communities and promote community safety. Now we're taxing job creation. If it was easy to create jobs here, we wouldn't have a pharmacy and grocery drought in 1/3 of the city. And we have to focus on job creation, not squeezing the existing jobs more for revenue that should be coming from other existing sources.
Ishan, could this not discourage companies from setting up shop here?
Yeah, I mean, so the data shows that there is actually no relationship between local taxation and job growth, right? Congressional Research Services issued out the survey looking at 50 years of tax policy in this country and showed that there's no relationship there. But what I will say is that of the top 3 reasons why people decide to start businesses and grow businesses here, the number one thing that people say is, how do we make sure that the city is affordable? So this head tax is not operating in a vacuum. Right? This head tax is operating as an alternative to the other options that are on the table. And the alternatives that we're talking about are taxing working families that are seeing an 80% increase in their ACA healthcare plans, and they are not going to be able to afford the increase in grocery taxes, the increase in liquor taxes, which will affect small businesses, the increase in property taxes. We need to ensure that we are not balancing this budget on the backs of working people. And the choice is clear. Do we do that, or do we tax the corporations that have seen actually ballooning profits over the last 8 years, and asking them to contribute just a little bit more alongside working families to fund the things that make this an affordable city and a safe city?
If I may, we have a definitional problem here in that we were promised by the CFO 2 weeks ago to get a list of the companies this tax would apply to, because as Alderman Bill Conway and other journalists have pointed out, the math does not work to get to the revenue number with 3% of employers. It's got to be a broader net that will impact job and hiring across the city. But we don't need a congressional research report to explain why this is a bad idea if we're worried about creating jobs. When we did one fair wage, I was here, we talked would it matter or not. And what has happened is hiring slowed down in hospitality in this industry when we started eliminating the tipped wage. And that's because we're in low margin industries that will be caught up in this head tax and why it's not a good idea. is because it will disincentivize the smallest companies, especially those in border wards, from investing in Chicago when you can go right across the city limits with lower property taxes, lower wages, lower sales taxes, and no head tax. It is brutally hard tax on those border wards in Chicago.
What drives businesses, and I say this as someone that has created more than 300 jobs in the city, what drives in the hospitality industry at that, what drives businesses in the city is demand, right? And demand exists in the city when we make sure that we are not taxing our working families into oblivion. Every dollar less taxed on a working family is a dollar more in their pocket that they can go to their nearby restaurants and their nearby bagel shops.
This is an argument, respectfully, that is not reflected by the data. The mayor touted again today how we had record tourism, record visitors to the airports. We do not have record employment in these industries. We are doing more with less because the margins are so tight before this tax.
So, okay, so I want to ask about that because the city had a head tax in the past, as we've mentioned, from 1973 to 2012. It was $4 per employee per month for companies with 50 or more employees. Now, that was scrapped by Mayor Rahm Emanuel in 2014, called it a job killer at the time. The mayor is proposing quite a big increase currently, $21 per employee per month for businesses with more than 100 employees. That is a steep hike, so that's $2,100 a month if you've got 100 employees, for example. Pat, to you first, can companies afford that? Can all the companies? Because some companies are operating with different margins.
The lower margin companies, the grocery stores, the pharmacies, the small businesses that every community, all the 70 neighborhoods want, cannot, or if they can, they'll do it with fewer employees. Because you've got your property tax bills, which we're finally going to get next week, going into the slow winter season, and you're not going to hire with the uncertainty of this tax heading over you into the holidays, because what are you going to do, cut somebody loose in January because of this tax? So it will hurt hiring near term and short term, especially in our border wards.
As we're looking at these businesses that have 100 or more employees, what we're talking about, the average 100-person company has a $10 million payroll. And what we're talking about here is a $24,000 tax on an average on a year on that $10 million payroll. That's less than half a cent per payroll dollar. Right? This is a thing that large companies can afford, and this is a thing that benefits not just large companies, it benefits the small and medium-sized businesses, because we know that when we invest in community interventions that work, like violence prevention, like free public mental health centers, that is increasing the ability for people to have safe streets and actually go to their neighborhoods.
Could those small and medium-sized businesses, though, that have smaller margins, could they not get squeezed on this?
Those small and medium-sized businesses have deliberately been cut out of this head tax to make sure that we're focusing on 100+ businesses. This is not the same head tax of 50+ people that was operating back in 1973 to 2014.
As a veteran of the 2012 phase out, this has the exact same tools that the comptroller back then used to rope in small bars, restaurants, and retail stores across the city. Exactly copied it.
Well, and to that point, there's been some criticism of the city's analysis over who would pay this tax based on who paid it before the repeal, I get paid to talk, back in 2014. Pat, what are your thoughts on that?
This is going to catch a wide net. It was brutal back then because the city decided that individual businesses with some common owners had to pay this thing. At the end of the day, the money that the city should be making off these employees is them coming into Chicago for these jobs, spending in their communities. We're going to have a 12% sales tax this summer as soon as the RTA tax goes in. Those employees spend locally when they come in. Even if we're just talking about Amazon and those warehouse jobs, if they go across the city border, they're not doing that auxiliary spending in the city. By even taxing the largest employers, we're not making money and we're not keeping those jobs local.
Is it that easy for a corporation to just sort of up and leave? Maybe they're just scooting to the outskirts of Chicago, but maybe they're scooting to Milwaukee or Indianapolis.
Making clear I don't speak for Amazon. We have a warehouse surplus and building boom post-pandemic all over Chicagoland. It is not a giant logistical challenge to move more of our logistical work, which lost a record amount of jobs, according to Challenger Jay and Christmas this morning, out of the city, or to set up the new jobs out of the city. And those are good entry-level jobs for any Chicagoan.
I will say it is as someone who has built and scaled a business, it is challenging to move a business across borders because everything is based on your talent. But the thing that I want to be clear on is that this tax is not existing in a vacuum. This tax is a set of options that we have. Do we tax large corporations that have actually got more profit during stagnant wages through the Trump administration? Or do we tax working families into oblivion, pushing them out of the city? Or do we cut the city services that people rely on to survive? Protect Chicagoans, protect corporate profits, or cut services, and we got to protect Chicagoans.
Pat, 30 seconds left. What other ways should the city be using to raise revenue, if not the corporate head tax?
We're not raising revenue is the wrong conversation. We're up 50% for the city payroll since the pandemic. Like, no private business could exist at this point in this economy if you were up that much. We're not going to be able to fill that hole.
Gonna have to leave it there. Conversation to continue another time. I'm sure Ishan Daya and Pat Dorr, thanks to you both for joining us.
Thank you
so much.
Appreciate it.
And that is our show for this Thursday night. Stay connected with our reporters and what they're working on by following us on Instagram at WTTW Chicago. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 7 for the Week in Review. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that gives back to its community in Chicago and beyond.